Okay, we are very happy to have our fourth guest on the series of Ask an Archer. Someone who does not need much of an introduction. Many people know about him in the traditional archery world. Murat Ozveri, Professor or Dr. Murat? What do we say?
No, I have a PhD in periodontics. I'm a dentist, so my academic degree is oncology.
Okay, so Dr. Murat. Excellent, excellent. Firstly, thank you very much for meeting with us. We have had back and forth conversation online for a long time. We've even tried to organize something in the UK with you, but obviously because of the current situation and other circumstances, it did not happen yet, but hopefully we can make this happen at some point.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a lot of questions, a lot of things we want to ask you. Obviously, we cannot fit everything into this short session, but we'll try to pick your brains about some of the questions that we have. And the questions that we cannot answer, maybe next time you can answer them in person when you come to England, hopefully, if we can make that happen.
Yeah. And can I also say that there is a YouTube channel of mine?
Yes, sure.
Abdul Kabza is the title of that. You know that, but maybe the audiences may want to watch these videos. And we have also a website, Tirendaz, which is a Persian term that was adopted by Ottomans as well, meaning archer. So this website has an English version as well. They can have a look for some interesting articles there as well.
Excellent. We will put the links underneath wherever we upload on Instagram or YouTube. We'll put the links there as well. Why don't we start there? Tell us about Tirendaz, the club, maybe a bit of history about yourself, how you came into archery.
Well, I started archery in 2002, and at that time, there wasn't any traditional archery in Turkey, unfortunately. After the chain of tradition was broken after the First World War. In fact, there have been other reasons for the decline of the tradition, like the financial, military, and political suppression of the Ottoman Empire in late 19th century. And there was a big earthquake that ruined the tekke, or the Archer's Lodge, in 1894. So afterwards, the building of the institution also got lost. And just short after that, the Balkan Wars and the First World War, the financial suppression in the Ottoman Empire, the political decline, and afterwards the tradition literally got lost. And in 1930s, the founder of the Republic, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, tried to revive the tradition by employing some archers who who belong to the archer families, but this attempt was unsuccessful because Oxford, the club at that time, survived only for 2 years, and after the death of Atatürk, it was closed. We have some rare photographs thanks to that club, because in 1930s, of course, photograph was widespread, so we have good source of images of original tackle and how they were used in early 20th century. So in 2000s, I started the revival of Turkish traditional archery again after this very short attempt in 1930s. And until 2000s, the Turkish intellectuals wrote a lot about Turkish traditional archery, but usually about the monumental stones, for example, that had been erected in the memory of record shots in flight archery, and about the Archer's Lodge, about its architecture, about its history, but the practical knowledge of archery got lost. So in early 2000s, I started with Olympic archery because it was the only available method that I could learn. of course, next to the compound bow. But thanks to the written sources that were available, and thanks to the new world that is connected via internet and via everything, I traveled to Hungary, to Korea, actually, to see how the thumb ring is used, because there wasn't any instructor who actually could teach me one by one. So I collected this information, and with the help of this vast amount of Ottoman treatises, and as well as Mamluk treatises, and some of which had been studied in English, as you may know, the Saracen archery, the Arab archery, they are all from the Mamluk Empire or Sultanate. And the Mamluk Sultanate is quite an interesting culture. It's a mixture of the Caucasian and the Turkish culture. They had been slave soldiers who had been recruited by the Caliph armies. So they have been high rank officers in the armies, and then they got the power, in fact, from there.
Yeah. Right.
So the Mamluk, you maybe are a native speaker of Arabic language, right? Mamluk
yes, I can read and write.
Slave.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's why the state, the Sultanate, has been named after their character of being slave soldiers once before they got to power, came to power.
Mm-hmm.
So they are a good representative of the archery culture from the north of Black Sea, Kumans, Kipchaks, many Turkic tribes, as well as the Caucasian tribes with their know-how in archery and horse riding, of course. So that's why we consider the Mamluk treatises as a very reliable source in reviving the military aspect of Turkish traditional archery. Mamluks have written both in Arabic language, which was the official language, of course, as the state that, the state ruled in the Arabic Peninsula in Egypt, in North Africa. So it was the common language of folk there, as well as, of course, Persian and Arabic languages were the adopted languages of all the sultans of that time because of the influence of Islam, mainly. And but they also wrote in Kipchak dialect of Turkish. So some Mamluk treatises from 14th century, as early as 14th century, are available in Kipchak language, Kipchak dialect of Turkish, that we can harvest information from.
Kipchak is a tribe or a people in Turkey, or it's a region?
Well, Kipchak is a tribe or a branch of the Turkish, how to say, Turkish nomadic folks, but it is also the name, the official name of one of the dialects of Turkish. So in Turkey, we take Oghuz dialect.
Oghuz, yes.
In Kazakh, Kyrgyzstan, they speak different dialects of Turkish. Turkish is a big language family, and it is under the Ural-Altaic language family. For example, Korean and Japanese languages are also on the Ural-Altaic language, but Turkish has, I think, 3 or 4 main dialects that are still spoken today.
Excellent, excellent. When you first started the club Tirandaz, you said you started in your archery career first recurve Olympic style, but Tirandaz was specifically for reviving traditional Turkish archery, yes. Correct?
Yes. I founded kemankesh. It was the very first group that I founded in 2004, if I recall correctly. And then there have been some disagreements in the group, and in 2008 I founded Tirandaz, and Tirandaz is dealing with traditional Turkish traditional archery only, and what we have been doing, I mean, museum research, experimental history, training new archers, and trying to find out information still from the treatises, because in this adventure, I mean, harvesting the information from the treatises, there are big gaps that we had to fill in.
Yes.
First of all, most of these informations were inaccurate, if not wrong. Some were even wrong. Not all of these treatises have been written by the warriors, by the soldiers. Some of them have been written with the order of the Sultan, with the order of any patron. So you can see that in the 19th century Ottoman treatises, for example, you can feel from the text that it has been the result of an order given.
Yes.
So,
right.
but some others, for example, a 14th treatise, which is the base of Saracen archery, was written by a warrior himself. So he was he had the practical know-how. He fought really, and he maybe taught people how to fight, how to use the bow and arrow. So these kind of, and even the visual data, for example, the miniatures and the other visual data may not be reliable all the time. So all these information should be harvested, should be collected, and then should be tested on field. So this is why I consider to be very important to experiment. And this is called, maybe you know that, experimental history. It started as experimental archaeology in early 1980s, and then continued with experimental history. So, and of course, these experiments can be performed quantitatively or qualitatively. And in qualitative experimentation, what we all do is actually a qualitative assessment. We are doing that, and the arrow goes like that. We are drawing like that. This is okay. And quantitative assessment is quite important, which is actually the more serious part of it. Doing some well-designed, scientifically reliable, and evidence-based experiments. Like for example, I did with a group of scholars in the sports department of Haliç University in Istanbul. We used speed cameras to see two different hatras and their influence on the arrow flight. So this is an undisputable thing. If you get scientific data, mathematical analysis, then you can say that this method was used for that purpose and this method was used for that purpose. So the treatises, the written information, the images, I mean the depictions from the old miniatures, all have to be tested, checked to revive it evidence-based on a real trustworthy base.
Yeah. No, excellent. I've seen some of the videos you've done with the chronometer, checking the speed, the different khatras, and like you say, you cannot argue with the scientific data that comes from that. It's hard evidence, and it shows if one style is better than the other. So, you know, we appreciate all of the time and research you have done in checking the manuscripts and collecting all of the old information, and also, like you say, experimenting with it and checking, is it actually true? Can this be done or not? So this is very good. So we appreciate you having to do all that.
In fact, as enthusiasts, we all are motivated by different motives, right? We have some identities. We all actually. I'm Turkish, a Muslim, and have been brought up in a country in which these kind of values have been kept alive for centuries. So, but what I believe personally is just we have to put them aside in reviving the traditional archery or any other tradition, just to avoid any influence of our opinions on the data that we are harvesting. It is very important. We have to be very cold-blooded, as if we didn't have any of these cultural identities. So this is actually what science is about, right? So this is the only way to find how our ancestors really did it.
Right.
So from a technical point of view. But on the other hand, of course, we all are happy because we are able to hold a part of history in our hand when we're shooting with the traditional bow, right? So this part, the subjective part, is okay, very welcome. I am one of those actually. But if it comes to reviving a tradition, it is more serious just than just having fun, or than just having that feeling of holding the history in the hand. So
Yeah.
I see it or consider it a little bit more seriously.
This is good because, like you say, many people they take it up as a sport, but me personally, and I think many people in the horse archery, in the archery, traditional archery and horse archery, they take it more as a discipline. And something is a discipline, we consider it more serious, and we have to be more serious about it as well. I wanted to ask you about, again, back in history, you mentioned something about, we have a lot of gaps in our history in either whether traditional Turkish archery or any other civilization. And I was speaking to someone the other day about this, and I said it's similar to like a puzzle, but many pieces of the puzzle are missing. And we only have a few pieces that we have to try to make a picture with. Obviously,
not
yeah.
the history, but the more specifically, when we talk more specifically about archery, let's say about the technical details as well as ceremonial details, or the details of the rituals, because it has the Turkish traditional archery is very rich of rituals as well. In maybe you know that, or many of the audiences know that. For example, the know-how of archery was ceremonially transferred to the new generation by performing some rituals, like the big kabza taking ceremony. Kabza is grip, as you know. We say büyük kabza alma töreni, which is actually the declaration of the proficiency of an archer who was able to shoot at 900 gez, which is 594 meters. And only when he could achieve this distance, and if only when the witnesses say that, okay, we saw him that who could shoot that far, then his proficiency was declared, and such a ritual, such a ceremony was performed, and his name was also registered into the registration book of the Archers Lodge. So the details of these rituals got lost, of course, because it was a part of an esoteric system, like all the other esoteric systems. They were esoteric, right? Not hidden, but esoteric. They were not known by anyone. It is the same with the so-called kemankesh sırrı, which is the secret of the archer. It is known that it has been whispered to the ear of the brand new proficient archer. When the archer was able to shoot at 900 gez, he kissed the hand of his master and was congratulated because of his success and registered into the book. And his master whispered a secret into his ear. And this secret is, for example, thought to be a verse from Quran, from Enfal, which is, if you shot, it was not you who shot, but God. For example, a lot of people believe that it was a secret, but in another source, for example, a series of advices of different type was recorded as a secret of archers. When we are motivated by these subjective things, by our feelings, by our beliefs, then we are going to be blind in seeing the truth. We can simply just eliminate what we don't want to see, and we will just embrace what we would like to see, right?
Right.
These kind of things should be filled in very carefully. Otherwise, we're going to go to a wrong path.
Right. I want to ask you about personality in history not so long ago, Necmeddin Okyay. He is considered, I think maybe you can correct me, to be, they called him the last Ottoman or something like this, because he had so many different skills and crafts he had mastered, archery, maybe bow making, calligraphy, Ebru, painting, all of these things. But unfortunately, because of the downfall of the Ottoman Empire, there was nobody he could transfer that knowledge onto. So he did.
He did, yeah. In fact, there is a misbelief or misconception that the Ottoman Empire was something different than the Turkish Republic. It was the same. The state was the same, only the regime changed. The culture was also the same, despite the fact that there have been many revolutions socially, politically. But the public was the same. The customs remained the same. Even today, there are a lot of social customs that have been continuing for hundreds of years. Nowadays, for example, it's Ramadan, and many customs, many daily habits continued from the Ottoman times. It was the same. Necmeddin Okyay was employed as a professor in the the University of Fine Arts. So, of course, the system of the education changed, because the education system in the Old East was one by one. You had a master or a sort of master-apprentice relationship. But in a faculty, in a university, in the Western style, there's a professor and there are a lot of students. But of course, Necmeddin Okyay taught people Hat, calligraphy, Ebru. He was a gardener specialized on rose breeding, for example. Even created unique rose breads, and he was very much involved with tasawwuf, as we say it, the Anatolian esoteric Islam. And he followed two orders, at least, as much as I know, both Mevlevi and Naqshbandi, I think. He was a multi-talented guy. About his bow making skills, a friend of ours was able to make an interview with one of his students, Professor Uğur Derman, and he said that none of the students of this generation, of course, see him or saw him making bows.
Okay.
He might have repaired some old bows. Maybe they needed some repairment, like re-gluing the horn or whatever, but they haven't seen him making a bow. And according to the records, he was trained by a master archer, but could not get kabza, so this professional level, being able to shoot at 900 guess. He could not do that. So, but he has been trained by a master archer. But there's no record about any training in his life about bowyery. But apparently, maybe because he was the only one who could repair the bows, who had some insight or some notion about repairing the bow. So we are not very sure about that. But what we assume is that he was the last bowyer, or he was the last representative of the tradition.
What about arrow making? Was he known for that? Did he have knowledge of arrow making or not? We're not sure.
Not very well known. Mostly his skill in bowyery or bow repairing, let's say, was mentioned in the magazines published in 1970s, because he died in 1977, if I'm not wrong. All right. So let's say mid 1970s. So not too much left from him as information, because he mainly concentrated on calligraphy in teaching mainly. So even his students, some of them became really famous calligraphers. But the transfer of the art of bowyery, if it was among his skills, we don't know for sure, was not transferred, unfortunately. But all the others have been taught by Necmeddin Okyay to others, fortunately.
Okay. The Buyuk Kabza, the shooting of 900 gez, this is only for, okay, sorry. I want to ask about.
I couldn't.
I want to
you
ask.
said shooting.
Yeah.
Go.
I want to ask about the kabza ceremony, the buyuk kabza ceremony. They have to, the archer must shoot 900 gets only one arrow, or they must do it a few times in order to pass this level?
These kind of details are lost, but probably it was not only just one try, because according to the rules, they were able to shoot 3, 5, 7, or 11 arrows, 7, 9, or 11 arrows in a competition when they are competing for distance, for example. So these kind of symbolisms exist in all the Ottoman culture. Especially, it is very much involved with the tasawwuf culture. So these kind of 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11 are related to the imams who followed Ali, etc. So there are some esoteric influence on Turkish archery rather than the influence. Much more, let's say, because the Orthodox influence also exists, as can be seen in the Ottoman archery treatises. There are always the hadith of Prophet Muhammad. So that's why the Orthodox part of the religion had its own influence on Turkish traditional archery, but the esoteric part had a more significant influence, especially because on the borders where people lived the life of a warrior.
Yes.
The Orthodox interpretation of Islam or any other monotheist religion didn't work well. They lived a different life. You mean, well, you understand what I mean? I mean, for example, they were bloody killers, but they also fought jihad for a holy thing. They actually killed people. So these kind of paradoxical things could have been justified by some esoteric interpretations of the religion, because the Orthodox religion is more suitable for people who live in peace in villages, in cities, in towns. But on the borders, in fact, the borders were not the same like we have now. You know, they are changing all the time.
Right.
There's no safety there, no rules, nothing. So this kind of the life of a warrior required a different, let's say, different religion. So that's why the esoteric interpretation or the esoteric versions had a bigger, a prominent, a more significant impact on all martial arts, and not only to Turkish, to Iranian as well, for example, which can still be in Zohane culture, for example. They are the traditional evaluate that by designing experiments or whatever. So you have to dig the old records, and you have to use some common sense, right?
Of course, of course. Very interesting, very interesting. I want to talk about kemankesh. Kemankesh is the traditional archery order, would you say? And is there any kemankesh today that is functioning similar to how it was in history?
Okay. First of all, the term kemankesh is a word adopted from Persian again. Somehow, Turkish archery is originated from the Central Asia, and we still have Turkish terms for both arrow, bow, archery, everything. But for all these terms, we have also Persian terms mainly, and some Arabic terms, like in kabza, for example. Kabz is in Arabic, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But both tirandaz and kemankesh are Persian words. Keman means cuffs in Arabic, or yay in Turkish, bow. So and kesh is drawer. So kemankesh is bow drawer, an archer, okay? And tirandaz is a Persian word again, but this word is composed by using the word arrow rather than the bow. So tir is arrow, and endaz is the one who uses it. For example, for musket shooters, the musket is tüfeng in Old Turkish, tüfeng endaz, and tir endaz, someone who is involved in shooting a bow or a rifle or a musket. So kemankesh, these two terms have been used as synonyms, but there might have been some difference as well. Kemankesh refers to flight shooters who were capable of drawing heavy bows, and tirandaz refers to a field archer or an archer who fought in the battlefield and who could show some skills in shooting the bow. But as I said, these two terms have been used in as synonyms as well, because we can see that on texts on these monumental stones, as I said, they were erected in the memories of record shots. And these stones or these columns, they are in the shape of columns, marble columns. These columns have texts on that. On these texts, there's always a literal or a poetical text. Sometimes the word kemankesh and sometimes the word tirandaz was used. So we know that at least in some occasions, these two words have been used as synonyms. And as an answer to your question, whether whether there are still people who live like kemankesh, I can say yes. Even people like you and me are people who take it too seriously. It's not just a sport, right? If it's a lifestyle for you, then you can be considered as a kemankesh. But I'm very careful in calling myself like that, because there is a well-recorded minimum requirement for being a kabza sahibi kemankesh. So a professional kemankesh should shoot an arrow, a pishrev arrow more specifically, to 900 gas, and we are still far beyond it.
Inshallah, one day we can get there.
we are far behind it.
Yeah. Okay, so someone was asking a question about there was a famous Sheikh Hamdullah. He was a famous calligrapher and also a famous archer. Have you heard of him?
Of course. Sheikh Hamdullah. Sheikh Hamdullah was the archery instructor of Bayezid II, Sultan Bayezid II. He was Sheikh of Sheikhul Hattatin, as we call it. We call it in Arabic language Sheikhul Hattatin, or the Sheikh of the calligraphers.
Yeah.
As well as Sheikh ul Kemankeshan or Kemankesh, the Sheikh of the archers. And the earliest monumental stone that we have still in Okmaydan, the archery field, belongs to him. Fortunately, this is the oldest available stone, which now is being displayed in front of the museum of the renovated Archers Lodge. It is from 15th century. Because many of these monumental columns got lost, unfortunately. According to the records, there were over 300, and now there are less than 40, and many of them are broken, incomplete, whatever. But some of them, mainly most of them are the stones erected to declare the victories of sultans. So these stones were really big, huge.
Yeah.
So they could not be stolen or demolished. And many of them, I think 6 or 7 of them, have recently been transported or carried to the yard of the newly renovated Archers Lodge. So they are under protection now.
Okay.
So Sheikh Hamdullah was a very well-known figure, very, very much respected for people like us.
MashaAllah, very good. It's very common in Ottoman history where some of the sultans they have a passion for archery and for many of the arts, especially calligraphy. Do you think there is a connection between being good at calligraphy and being good at archery?
Yes, there is a connection, and we, a friend of us, a Tirandas member, Ozan Ulu, an engineer, wrote a very good article about that. But unfortunately, we could not find time to translate that to English. I hope we can do that for English-speaking people.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. In the old Eastern world, the warrior was balanced by the poet. So it is like I give an example to make it more understandable, like yang and yin in Far East. Okay, this it's called dichotomy. Dichotomy means two opposites, but
Yes.
they are not opposites, but they complete each other. Like God Himself is the punisher, but or also the merciful. Okay, so because of that, the human soul, the human spirit is similar to that. So being too much to Jalal is not very good. You have to be a little bit Jamal as well. So that's why arts have been considered to be very important for a warrior. If you are if you are trained in martial arts, then you have to be trained in arts as well to have a balance. Okay, that's what I said actually in the borders when people lived the life of a warrior. They had a very different mental state, very different spiritual goals than people who are settled, live a more or less peaceful life in towns and villages. So that's what I'm. And in old times, even until the very end of the Ottoman Empire, it was a tradition that archers, at least many of them, were also interested in calligraphy, as can be seen in Sheikh Hamdullah in 15th century.
Excellent, very interesting. We could just do one conversation just on your knowledge of history and history of Turkish archery. Is very, very interesting. Very interesting. If someone if someone outside of Turkey came to visit the Tirandas club, they want to train, for example, what type of curriculum or schedule do you put them on? Murat, can you hear me?